Derek, the one question I keep getting asked is, what is COVID going to do to the commercial real estate market? I'm just curious. What are you telling people?
I just try to keep it super simple, always. What I've told people in the past is that retail is probably going to get hit the hardest, and that's actually some things that we've seen so far.
Okay.
Office, yes. Some offices are requiring people to wear masks, so some people would rather just work from home. And then industrial seems to be going, it didn't even skip a beat. So can you dive deeper into why industrial maybe have continued to thrive in this environment?
Yeah, I think that your summary is right. So retail down, office flat, industrial up. And I really think that you've got to put yourself in the place of a business owner. You know, COVID hits, almost every company now has chosen to do both an online presence and, a storefront, if you will. And COVID hits, the government shuts down your storefront. You really have no option but to put your resource, your time, and your energy online. And as we know, that online e-commerce is something that is much better suited for an industrial building. I think it's also important to realize that COVID, if anything, is just accelerating the trends we already saw in place. And we were seeing sort of a decade-long shift towards e-commerce. And so we went into COVID with more retail inventory and more sort of vacancy, or less vacancy, in a tighter industrial market. So that's exacerbated that challenge. If you're a building owner, Derek, and you have, say, an office building, what advice would you give that owner about how to position their space for COVID?
So what we've seen recently is just building owners just want to push it out a year. They just want to see what's going on with COVID and how the results are going to actually play out. What else have you told the owners?
Well, I think the advice that was true before COVID is true during, and it's still going to be true after. And that's that, we say 1/3 of tenants have imagination, 2/3 don't. So if you want to lease your empty space quickly, it's always better to have it move-in ready. Some people call it a make-ready improvement, but what it really means is, look, if the carpet's stained or torn up, you either replace it or shampoo it. If that last tenant had funky colors on the wall, we go back to a neutral color. You do the things that you know need to be done to move in. And look, I understand that there's a risk there, right? The risk is I'm going to spend money. A new tenant's going to come in and ask me to either tear that out, or they say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. I get it. You're playing the odds a little bit here. But what we've seen over time is that buildings that the moment a tenant moves out, the landlord jumps on getting the make-ready improvements done and get it ready for the next tenant. That pays off 9 times out of 10 in both higher lease rates in the end, and also deals where a tenant doesn't have the time to wait for the improvement to happen. A lot more people are in that position than are the folk that says, hey, I won't move in unless it's perfect and you have to make these adjustments for me. So before COVID, during, and after, our advice is the same. Control what you can control, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, and that's the condition of the space.
Exactly. And that's interesting because you think that during COVID you might want to hold on to your money and not put that capital into the property, but what you're doing is really shooting yourself in the foot because no tenants don't want move-in ready space.
A guy I really looked up to once had a great saying. He said there's no such thing as an ugly full building, and there's no such thing as a pretty empty one. And the point there being, what makes commercial real estate attractive to investors is cash flow. And the only way you get that cash flow is when a user has moved into the building and is paying rent. So full buildings with paying tenants are a thing of beauty. And so make that happen as quickly as you can is the advice there.
So we just covered office. How about retail? I think that's going to be hit the hardest. I was hearing some crazy numbers from you that you think that 50% of restaurants are going to be vacant or evicted or not be able to make rent payments. Is that true?
It's between restaurants, their workers, and then the supply chain behind them. All of the companies that supply the food and the beverages that get consumed, all of that supply chain, it accounts for something on the order of 20 million employees in the United States. It's one of the largest employment sectors that we have, and it is decimated by COVID. And the end is not anywhere near, or at least a return to normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a retail building owner, I think the first bit of good advice you can take is strike whatever deal you can, right? If you can get a tenant that maybe is a different use, maybe doesn't meet the standards you had before for what you were willing to put into that space or where you were willing to spend money on a new tenant, recognize that you're going to have to be much less selective, much more flexible, and much more willing to try new concepts out, because what worked in the past is unlikely to work in the future in all cases. So that's our first bit of advice to retail owners is flexibility is king. Understand that a lot of people are going to have to try new concepts before we find what the next great post-COVID user is, because the old rules I don't think are going to apply anymore.
Exactly. And it's going to be a huge shift towards experiential retail. You were saying before, there's going to be massive, the Sears, the massive big retail buildings where shoppers used to come in and out, and they're just going to be vacant. Are we going to see more of an industrial shift in those buildings, or what's going to happen to all those empty real estate?
Well, Derek, I think your experience, and you come in every Monday morning, and you tell me great stories about the stuff you've done over the weekend. What is it that gets you and your friends and your girlfriend out of the house? What kind of things do you put down the phone to do and go see and do? Give us some examples.
Oh, it's literally, going out to have fun.
Okay.
So anything regarding, food.
Food obviously brings people together. I know that there's a concept in downtown Reno that's done surprisingly well, and that's axe throwing. Something that didn't exist a few years ago. Have you been axe throwing?
I have, actually.
All right, tell me about it. What appealed?
Well, it's that new place downtown. They have everything set up. I haven't been there after COVID, but
okay.
I'm actually curious to see how they're doing. It was a good experience, and it was something that I had never tried before. And I think that's what's important for landlords to understand, is that we got to think outside the box.
Absolutely.
And have you ever heard of axe throwing right in the middle of downtown prior to 5 years ago?
Worst case scenario, I had an accident in downtown Reno, but I didn't throw axes. I'm sorry, the dad jokes just come to me, bro. But I will tell you that the other experiential concepts I've heard are escape rooms. Have you done that?
I have, actually. They really, really test my knowledge. But it was honestly something that I think can thrive through COVID, because you're with your own group. You don't have to be exposed to other groups, and you can just have fun doing your single individual escape room.
All right, I'm going to throw another one at you. Have you been on a wine walk?
I have been on a wine walk.
See, that's another experience. All right, give me another. Have you ever done any of the biking or kayaking in downtown Reno?
I have.
And I think that just the fact that you say yes to every one of these items, those are experiences that when I was your age, we didn't even, we didn't imagine, we didn't think about doing, and yet every one of these ideas appeals to you. I'm sure there's one that we did that you still do, because I've heard it from you before. What's your take on live music?
So, live music is what gets me up every morning, actually. And it's a bummer because we're not able to go do those live big festivals anymore, and so I think finding other ways is going to be really important to commercial real estate.
And I think that's one of the great things that's going to combine every generation, is that they say that music is the language of the soul. I don't think that's going to change. So that's an experience that I have some of my best memories in live music venues. You have yours. So whether it's a new concept, axe throwing, wine walks, escape rooms, or if it's a classic like live music, those are the kind of experiences that retail owners are going to appeal to before, during, and after COVID.
Awesome.